because I'm sure things are very different from 2006 to now. When it comes to infrastructure finance, how have, you've seen it, what work has IIFCL done, and any anecdote that you recall during this journey?
Yeah, I would be very unfair to, say something very undiplomatic.
No, it doesn't have to be anything that you recall.
Looking at it from a more holistic perspective, the way in which we have grown learning by doing. And IIFCL has been, I would always say, that we have been, in the growth path as the infrastructure sector grew. So we have seen everything what happened. The challenges of the past were definitely there. Learning by doing, yes, we have now gathered a lot of learnings. We have a rich experience on many things. Probably the only diversified institution, the only institution which has, been through the ups and downs and vagaries, the oldest oldest financer in the infrastructure environment. We have, like I said, banking sector's performance was quite challenging in the earlier years, only because our concession systems, the contract systems, the dispute resolution systems, and the kind of partnership approach between the public and private sectors, they all were actually evolving. Today, it's a different environment. We have last 4-5 years, we have, in particular, I would say last 4-5 years, we have seen a lot of push on the reforms. Land Acquisition Act, then we have the faster approvals. It's not just the road sector which is now happening, it's almost all the other sectors which are employing the public-private partnership modes. Better risk allocations. The concession agreements also have evolved, and there have been a number of versions, and we have renegotiation clauses now, and we have inflation indexing. So many things like that have happened. All these have contributed to the quality of growth of infrastructure. The earlier days, while learning by doing, we definitely faced all the hurdles and challenges, and we have had piled a lot of non-performing assets in the process. But in the current environment, I would say that infrastructure projects are perhaps the most safest assets to lend.
Yeah, but did you think of infrastructure assets being as safe during the hard times, right after the financial crisis, when we saw that slow patch coming in, when there was all this PNB finance scam, and the entire financial market froze. So, do you think there are learnings from those times, or do you think now it's very, very different and we're never going back to those times?
See, I would not say everything is hunky-dory, but the thing is, the past global headwinds always have their, impact on the local financial environments. But looking at it from the experience point of view, the governance structures, the risk management systems, the diligence processes, appraisals, consortium of lenders. Solo lending environment always has its risks, when the concession environment is weak. So even today, I would say a lot needs to be done as far as concession environment is concerned. So we have been going through a concession of lenders. And it's not just one institution which actually employs all these elements together. It's a multiplicity of institutions which employ their wisdom into lending. And if you have the right structures, the right risk management systems, and all these things what I just mentioned, I am absolutely certain that infrastructure would definitely be the most qualitative asset that any institution will have. That's very, very exemplified from our own balance sheet, because we have 92% of our asset portfolio are A, AA, and AAA rated. Perhaps, in the past, it would have been about 20% of such assets, A, AA, and AAA. So now we have come a long way, and we are looking at the 20% having transformed into 92%. So that's the change which has been brought about. And it's not about one institution, it's about regulations, it's about the government initiatives for putting the best practices in the infrastructure ministries, and a lot of other schemes. So I think it's a mixture of all which has led to the kind of good, robust platforms that we have today.
So your portfolio and your book is looking very good. That's something I think exceptional that you've done. How have you seen infrastructure financing change over the last 2 decades? Because see, initially started with the government, then we had some start-stops with PPPs, and now it's, a lot of private participation is also coming through. Are there some structural issues that still remain with infrastructure financing? Because, the RBI has certain restrictions for banks when it comes to sectoral exposures. NBFCs has their own issues where RBI has also been tightening, its reins a little bit. So what was it then? How has it evolved? And what are you looking forward to? And what are the structural issues that still exist?
Long-term financing is not just about one institution giving very, very long-term loans. I've always maintained that, it has to be a multiplicity of institutions, and, the right amount of risk appetite that needs to be there for each institution to take the kind of risks in the lending in that particular phase and life cycle of the infrastructure project. Earlier, the banks and financial institutions were faced with only construction-oriented and construction-led projects, because in the first phase, it was only construction and construction. Today, we have an asset portfolio which actually comprises both of construction and ongoing construction projects, and it is also completed and revenue-earning projects. That revenue-earning projects have become an asset class by themselves, and we have a lot of global interest in that. That's where, the additional, resources are actually flowing into the Indian infrastructure economy. But I would say that long-term financing is all about how you can look at real long-term. What is long-term? Long-term is not just about 15 years or 20 years of concessions which are, developed by an agency based on, predictable cash flows. It's about how you can sustain these cash flows and go over a longer period of time, over generations, because the infrastructure is a public utility which is, built today for the current generation of population, enjoys. But it's going to be there for the next generation and other generations to come. It's going to be beyond that. So I think, costs which the current generation is paying is only for, this asset. So I think that has to be distributed over a period of time. When you look at it from a cost distribution over a longer period of time, you need to employ such financial structures, and the architecture should be such that construction part can be taken over by the institutions which can, absorb that kind of risks. The banks and institutions like IFCL and few others, Power Finance Corporation, or, you have the lenders, who have been there for the last 10, 20 years. They can absorb the construction risk very well. So 3 years, 4 years. But, the infrastructure asset can be relayed from one set of institution to another set of institutions. And that's how, long-term financing happens. And this will happen with a very good interplay between financial institutions and the bond market. The bond market is very, very active in the various other, world economies. So I think we have to have a good interplay. So when you have this kind of a relay, then we can, emulate examples like the Channel Tunnel or the Japanese lines or something like that, where financing can happen over 100 years. And where, we need, and longer the financing, the better the, ease of, distribution of cash flows and the installments which come in. So I think that makes the project all the more viable. So we need such structures. And if we need to go, beyond this 15 to 20 year financing that we have today, the asset liability matches between the banks and the financial institutions, which have to be managed. I think let every institution fund as per their appetites and as per the potentials of their liabilities, rather than getting into a more asset-specific tenor. So I think that is what needs to change in the architecture, and if that needs to be done, we need changes in the regulations, financial regulations. And there's where RBI needs to step in and take note of it and change infrastructure, particularly for infrastructure projects. I always used to say that, the regulations today are such that you have the same parameters employed for both retail loans as well as for commercial and infrastructure loans. A cat can turn around very fast. If you ask the elephant to turn around with the same pace and at the same time, it's going to be very, very difficult. So I think, that's what I mentioned, that in the World Bank report now, they have said that 56% of the economies, global economies, have infra-specific laws, and 76% of the economies have infra-specific regulations. I think we must take cue from that, and I think RBI should take note of this.
Beyond what the RBI does when it comes to reforms, what other kind of reforms do you want to see in the infrastructure sector? Because it was mentioned in the PPT also that there needs to be, the concessionaires have to be agreed upon, and there has to be a mechanism of dispute resolution as well. What other reforms are required in infrastructure and infrastructure financing?
We still have to have stronger concessional structures. India is perhaps the only country which has the credit enhanced, the government of India playing a very, very great role in giving credit enhancements by way of covering the termination risks. So many of us have not been talking about it, but I think we had a global conference recently in London when we talked about it, a lot of interest evinced on that. Termination cover is provided by the government through its budgetary specifications and by the budgetary provisions by way of, through the NHAI. And a few other sectors are also giving this. I think if you replace this termination cover with by insurance companies, insurance for termination of projects, it will ease the budgetary burden. At the same time, it will give a lot of other, benefits to the fundamentals by giving more business to the insurance companies, getting more sectors to get covered with the insurance covers for in case of terminations. So termination is one part. Once if that is covered, I think, the greatest default risk is covered. The rest of it goes on, how you cover the operation risks, how you cover the various aspects of how it has to be maintained, how you have to maintain the quality and all that. So those are, things which can happen. And as InvITs are there today, we have more global investors in the InvITs. And InvITs are more or less managing all the quality completed and revenue earning assets. And I see that, the global practices will definitely percolate down. Already we are seeing state-of-art roads, the quality of roads, accident proneness, so many things, how you have to keep, amenities available at, close stretches. All those things are happening. So we are seeing a number of measures like this coming in. So that's why I said today we are standing at a crossroad. We are at a milestone. We are seeing the new age infrastructure developing. So there's where we are at takeoff stage.
The government has a mission of Viksit Bharat by 2047, a $40 trillion economy. So of course, the infrastructure financing requirements will be huge. How can IIFCL support the government to fulfill this mission? Because, there is always a worry that the funds will not be forthcoming. That will become a constraint when it comes to financing the infrastructure for the growth required.
The financing requirements is definitely huge, and we definitely would like to play a role in, giving direct financial assistance. And as we have seen, we have to grow with our, our the existing levels of capital, existing levels of debt, and good balance between them, and appropriately balance it out for ensuring that we have that kind of assistance ready for the infrastructure sector to absorb. We hope to kind of look at doubling our balance sheets very soon, in the sense by June we expect to touch 1 lakh crores, and by the next 3 years we like to double this. So that is what is a very, very normative process. But looking at it from a sectoral point of view, I think it is more institutional structures which will matter. It will be the kind of innovations that come in, the kind of collaborations that are there with, between the institutions. The funding needs and the funding solutions for the problems that's being faced today, 1 or 2 institutions are not panacea for that. I think you need more number of institutions, we need more collaborations, and we need the kind of partnerships that would need to be intertwined between the institutional frameworks. That would be much more required. Particularly, if we have to look at a financial architecture which will be in sync and which will back up long-term concessional structures. So if you would want to go to a 100-year financing, you need changes in financial regulation. That is the way in which infrastructure sector projects are looked at today for restructuring. I think that definition needs to undergo a little bit of change. I think apart from that, I've already said that infra-specific regulations and infra-specific laws, this will again contribute to...
Right. Energy transition is also going to be a cornerstone for India's growth from here on, because India wants to get the leadership in having clean energy as it grows. Now, how do you see this space? Because there are some projects here which are, they have no precedent even around the world. Say a hydrogen project, it is a CCU project. These are still pilot projects which have not been, even tried at scale at many places abroad. So how do you see energy transition, and what kind of financing are you looking at for some of these projects?
See, IFCL is perhaps the first institution in India to have got sustainability ratings. I should have mentioned that. I think I didn't mention that, but I think it was there in the presentation. We have already made commitments to the government that we will be financing renewables to the extent of 50,000 crores in the next 3 years. And we have also put in place a climate and sustainability strategy and framework. So these are some of our initiatives. But looking at it from the environment point of view, we need a clear, an architecture there as well, because we have to see how best, identification of what is sustainable. We have to see, we have to be very clear about greenwashing. I think that's something which we have to look at, and we have to see how best, we can identify and put in place mechanisms for that, rating projects at the ground level for sustainability. Rating agencies have a very, very big role in this regard. At the same time, there should be regulatory incentives. Unless there is greenium for sustainable projects, I mean, today it's, whether it's green or blue or white, it doesn't really matter. It's all, we don't really have any incentives for any color. So I think all are in the same, all are viewed with the same standards. I think we need to look at that, because there is an element of cost that get into, making projects sustainable today or resilient today, and that cost needs to be covered. How you cover that is only through, these kind of mechanisms. These mechanisms are employed elsewhere in the world. I think it's all a matter of, putting the architecture together. Regulator has already, the SEBI has already put in its disclosure norms, and I think the Reserve Bank of India is also working out something. Rating agencies have their role to play. I think it's a matter of,
So where does the fund come from? Is it going to be more of green bonds? Is it going to be structured finance?
In today's environment, there's no incentive for, like I said, it is all there is no color, specifications. So there is no greenium for the green bonds.
All right. Now, speaking specifically of IIFCL, and people want to get a leaf out of your playbook as well, but in the near term, what are your targets for this year and say till 2030 when it comes to loans, sanctions, disbursements? Any numbers?
We have a target of 50,000 crores, of which we have achieved almost 85% till December.
For this financial year?
The
next financial year?
This next financial year, we would like to, almost grow at the same pace. We are looking at a CAGR of 20%. So we expect to touch the 1 lakh crore balance sheet size by June. And we would like to touch the 2 lakh crore balance sheet size by 28.
Okay.
So I think this is what...
Doubling very fast. Also wanted to find out from you what kind of innovative financing models you would like to see in India, say something that has worked abroad for infrastructure. Do you think something like that can be replicated in our country? You spoke about InvITs. There are venture capitalists also who are very keen on, mature products. But how do you drive in capital where the risk is high, where it's not mature yet?
See, I think the regulations have to be, carefully calibrated according to the strength and the robustness of our concession systems and our structural environment in the ground level. Today, we don't have still we have weaknesses in the concession systems. We have weaknesses in the structural systems. The dispute resolution environment is still evolving. Many things like that.
Plus, there's a question on governance and predictability of the projects also.
Even, let me give you an example of the London, where I sit in the chair of the IIFCL, IFC UK. We don't have, I was just telling Mr. Rajaraman this morning that, we don't have capital, limitations for doing business. So I think with $100 million, we are 100 million pounds. We are managing $5 billion, which is possible in a place like London because of the kind of legal systems they have. They have a small example is the asset tracing mechanism. You just told to tell an anecdote. I'll not name the company, but globally renowned player and a very, very strong, probably one of the biggest infrastructure players in India and in the Asian region, who actually went down under and could not, but yes, there was the promoter guarantee. And IIFC UK was there in the consortium. And thanks to the London laws, we could do the asset tracing wherever it was in the globe. Almost, we went all the way up to Antarctica.
And what was the recovery there?
100%.
100%.
Without any loss. And the entire consortium benefited. And it's not just one example. We have such examples. Wherever IFC UK is there, this kind of, safety net will be there for all the other lenders.
The biggest safety or
because loss.
Risk-proof
English
any
loss.
project is getting IFC UK into a project? Is that the only way forward?
Well, yes, I can promote IFC UK here as well because I'm the chairman, but I think the English loss is what I'm talking about.
But
we
our
have asset
laws
tracing.
have also changed. We have IFC.
That's why I said we need infra-specific laws because we need asset tracing. There are so many weaknesses in the legal system, contractual enforcements, contractual provisions, and many things like that.
That is one of the reasons, even in the ease of doing business, India does not rank high because of the enforcements of contracts.
But it's not just about that. Everything is evolving. I think in the last 20 years, if you see the journey, the last 4-5 years have been tremendous, and it has been, very, very steep growth. And to keep up with that growth, we need to also put in these kind of structures. That's what I meant.
All right. Now, the Indian government also goes and pitches our country as a very investor-friendly destination to bring in foreign capital into the country. So how can you help the government here or partner with the government to attract this investment into infrastructure assets in our country? Do you work with multilateral organizations? When there are bilateral agreements, how do you then negotiate with your comparative companies in those countries? What role can you play?
We are already working with all the multilaterals. We are working with all the multilaterals who are in India, and we are also inviting multilaterals into India who have never stepped into India. So those are also there. We have also been holding global conferences. We have held a few conferences in London and elsewhere to showcase Indian infrastructure project environment to investors elsewhere in the world, and that's been very, very well received. We have, been able to get the government also. The secretary was there, and I think we have a very, very ongoing dialogue with the help of the high commissions in various places to kind of do such, investor programs. We'll continue with them, and we'll see how best we get investors into India. It's not important that they just come into IIFCL, but it's basically, we are trying to look at the whole holistic, potential of the infrastructure environment. If they come in through equity to develop projects, the developers can be interfaced with them. If they come in to, lend to institutions in India, we have other lenders. The last conference that we had partnered with NABFID and Exim Bank. Exim Bank has always been there with us in all the other earlier conferences as well. So we are looking at, both equity and debt providers come into the environment as such.
All right. Last question for you. Any tips or tricks or any, ideas that you have for other players in this market? Because you have shown us that you have completely diversified your resources, you have improved upon the quality of assets, and you also mentioned that, when you lend for the long term, but you must repay for the short term, there's an inherent problem. So how do you get over those problems and, do what IIFCL has done over the last few years?
It is very simple, and let's keep it simple. It has to be, you have to do the right things again and again. Be consistent, that's all.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jaishankar, for speaking with us.